Hello and welcome to the Maverrik podcast. I am Luke to James. I'll stop that one again. I blame the heat. I'll tell you what, we'll keep it in. We'll start again. Hello and welcome to the Maverrik podcast. I am Luke 2, and today I'm joined by David O'Hearns from Dawn Creative. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Yeah, hot as you've just mentioned, the heat, but all well otherwise.
Got the brain fuzz going on.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is during like the peak of the heat so far. The studio is pretty cool, so we're happy. Are you staying cool where you are up in Manchester?
Yeah, we got ice creams in earlier to try and cool the team down, but there wasn't much ice in the cream. I would say it was melting there before you could eat it. But other than that, no, we're all good.
Have you ever tried the trick where you put the ice in a bowl and then you blow a fan over the top of it? Because we did it yesterday in my house. I think it does work, but you need to have all the doors shut. I don't know how it works. It's all physics, which is above me. But
okay.
Apparently that's how it works.
No, I've definitely not tried that.
So let's go into the meat and bones of your business currently. Do you want to just give everyone a brief introduction of who you are and your business currently?
Yeah, so I'm David O'Hearns. I'm the founder and creative director of Dawn Creative. I've been in the industry for 25 years this year, so a bit of a landmark occasion. I've run a couple of agencies in my time, 8 years running Dawn, and we're essentially a digital brand agency, so we focus all of our conversations around brand first. We want to understand the brand that we're working for to make sure that if we're doing a project, we understand the values of the brand, its purpose, what direction of travel it's trying to take, make sure we do the right work for the brand, not just something randomly creative that's not aligned. And then we do a lot of work in developing brands and rebranding companies that have lost their way for numerous reasons.
Yeah, when it comes to when people talk about brands, a lot of the time the word gets thrown around with creatives and then the colors and the message. Brand is like everywhere, so it can be a message online which can get really diluted. Does that annoy you, the fact that people overuse brand quite often, or do you think that it's important that people keep that in mind, how big important brand actually is?
Probably a little bit of both, I would say. I think the word brand has just become a little bit too commonplace. And I think if you ask people what a brand is, most people will think it's a logo and color, or at the most basic level. And it's part of what we obviously do. We produce a visual identity, but we don't produce any visual identity without any words behind the brand. And for me, that's where the most important part comes. If you've written your purpose well and everyone knows why they turn up to work, you've written your values well and everyone knows how they're supposed to behave, you'll end up attracting the right audience. And the values and purpose should drive every decision in the whole business, from what type of software you use, operating systems, operations as a whole, recruitment processes, everything. And part of that is the clothes that you wear as well, which is essentially your visual identity. But yeah, brand is definitely misunderstood on the whole.
Yeah, brand is pretty much everything. It all encompasses a business. So when you're building a brand, especially we talk a lot about building a personal brand here at Maverrik, because a lot of the time when we're talking about creating people's social profiles, whether it's on LinkedIn and they have their branding and who they are as a person, you build that up. What happens is your brand becomes you, and you become your brand, and then that becomes your business. And in the business, when there's a lot of people and there's a larger business, it's a way of making sure that you and the business's brand sort of align together. Because I feel like when you're in this big company, it's hard to have an identity which is your identity along with a brand identity, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to portray all of the brand's messages and values, and you need to be yourself as well. And I think they need to align, because otherwise you're not going to be comfortable where you're working for a start. If you don't believe in the values, you shouldn't be working in that company. You should go and live those values, but you shouldn't be afraid to be yourself online, because that is your brand. In terms of company brand versus personal brand, where do you stand on that, David?
I know personal branding is becoming, let's say, more of a thing in the digital space. I guess it depends how you look at it. If you're talking from like a business perspective, and a business that employs people, it could be small, medium sized, could be quite big. But most of the time, if it's been done well, the values will have stemmed from a founder in the first place. So those values are quite close to the individual as well. And they decide to set up a business maybe because they want to do it differently from where they've been employed, or they see an opportunity in a market and they want to do something. Now, a lot of people will set up a business and just get on with it. And then 5-10 years later, realize maybe we need values and purpose to align everybody. But Richard Branson would be an example I'd use in, I think the values of what he ultimately stood for back in the day are spread throughout the Virgin group as a whole. And then over the time, he's become the personal brand and figurehead for the company to help support the bigger brand, if that makes sense. But it's essentially his kind of ethos and values that have been driven through the whole of the Virgin brand from day one. So if, from a personal perspective, you run the company, most of the time, I would have thought your values are quite close to you as an individual as well, because otherwise it's difficult to stand behind them.
Yeah. All you're doing is being yourself and you're portraying that out there as how you do business.
Yeah, exactly. And, we're going through the process at the moment where, with 25 years this year, having been in the industry, it makes sense for me to carve out the time to be more visible. And that's on podcasts like this, running our own webinars, going out and doing speaker slots, getting in front of people and sharing my voice and opinion on the world of brand. Hopefully educating people along the way and inspiring people along the way. That's what I want to do, but it'll still come with the same kind of core values that my agency have, because I tested my values on myself before I set the company up to make sure that I set the company up correctly from day one.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of business owners who say, well, my values and my brand is just the work I do. But in a way, it's a way of conveying that to everyone, because I know what I do and I know what I value and I know what I really want to put out there as a business and as myself. But I do need to be able to communicate that, because I can't just assume that everyone else is going to know, what I do, and what value I bring.
Yeah, exactly. And if it's documented, which it should be, and if your values and your purpose are celebrated on a daily basis, which they should be, everyone in the company starts to know what they are. So instead of writing them and sticking them in some frames or on a wall and hoping that everyone will read them every day, they need to actually be actioned, and decisions in the business need to be made. And it needs to come from the top down. If people can see people making decisions based on their values, not just trying to grab some cash at the next opportunity, actually making a business decision that's actually framed by something, it gives the owners and managers and directors more credibility from their teams, because they can see them say, oh, we can't do that because that's not us, we're this. And it makes the values more important. And also, if you use it in an induction program, you're looking at people that you're recruiting based on those values in the first place. So you should be attracting the right type of talent and people that actually believe in what you're trying to achieve. So you get a stronger team at the end of it, but they've got to be ingrained within daily practice, not just a thing that gets referenced every 6 months.
Yeah, it's not just a poster on the wall. It's a little bit more than that. At Maverrik ourselves, we make sure, and it's in a lot of people's contracts, I say nearly everyone's contracts, that you have to be on LinkedIn and have a presence, because that's the company that we are. We are building and growing businesses through social media. So everyone in the company needs to be on social media and living the values of the company. It's not as rigid as it sounds. And a lot of the time when it comes to brand and content, and you have everyone out there trying to promote the message, how can you, in a way, make it easy for people to promote the company's message and also adhere to brand guidelines? Because you'll have a lot of people running around. I'm part of the marketing team myself. So if someone goes against the brand guidelines and puts out somewhere which is completely not us, I have to be the bad guy and go, what, why did you do this? This is a strange color, and then this blog doesn't have anything of value in it. We need to go through it again, in a nice way. I'm not going to start showing people that they've got the wrong shade of red, but I'm going to say, maybe use this on next time. How do you yourself go about making it easy for people to share content based on the business?
Yeah, you're right. It's a difficult thing for any business of any size, isn't it? Because in the digital age, anyone can grab hold of anything and they can post anything as well. And they might deem it to be right. I'm sure people aren't trying to go out the way, but unfortunately, so many brands degrade from the day that they're born because too many people have access to things, and too many things can be put out there without that control. And I was on a podcast the other week. I was speaking to a client the other week, and the term brand police came about as if it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Rather than you'd want your car mechanic to make sure that he's checked everything before it goes on the road, and your brand is your biggest asset that you'll have. And to attract the right people and the right customers, you need to make sure that it is truly consistent. So, one, it's important. Two, to get people to do it, you've got to kind of essentially manage the brand. You've got to give some degree of freedom, see what gets put out there, and then obviously start to rein it in the right way. But you can't rein it in if you don't have values and a purpose and other things behind the scenes, because it becomes opinion based. Whereas if you can say, "Oh, saw these few posts the other few days, remember that our values are X, Y, and Z." And I think if you pared that back, or you pushed it a bit harder maybe, or depending on what it is, you can actually have a reference point rather than I've got an opinion on what you're doing and henpecking people. It's a grown-up conversation around what is it that we actually stand for as a company. And so then it's no one's opinion, it's pre-agreed words that we stand for as a company.
Yeah, I think you need to add a little bit of flexibility to it, because otherwise you can stifle some creativity. And then when people don't feel they can be creative, they don't feel motivated to create. And what can happen is they'll just stay silent. And if they stay silent, you don't get a lot of the attention you could get if you are posting constantly on social media. If all of our teams stopped posting today, then we couldn't say that, who we are doesn't come down, everything goes down, and we're going back to like square one. Yeah. But if everyone's talking and, really being motivated to push the brand, talk about it, get involved, then you get a lot of attention from it. You get people signing up for more things, you get more leads, you get more clients through the door, you can get more testimonials from those clients. It all builds up from there. So having a brand which can have that flexibility to it, but also goes, when you look at it, go, this is just them. Like I see this company, I see this message, and I just immediately think, that's that company. That's amazing.
Yeah. Exactly. And a lot of that, especially on social media, you've obviously got visual assets that you can use, a static JPEG or a carousel or an animation. And in theory, the right people creating that should be quite consistent. If you've got the skills and the tools to do it, and you've got the asset bank and stuff like that, that could be quite consistent. The trickier part for a lot of people is when it comes to tone of voice, because we can all write something. We can compose an email, we can compose a social post, but it's trying to create at least a framework around that and a general tone. So we have like tonal guidelines that we try and get the team to follow. And it can be subtle things, like instead of saying we are, we say we're. So if you know that, you start to check your sentences to go, actually, I need to make it sound more like the spoken word rather than the written word. So that's nudging it ever closer to being generally consistent, but it's not full on brand police, don't post anything until it's been checked, because you'd lose any momentum.
Yeah, I feel when people writing for anything, they write for themselves a lot of the time. A lot of companies do this. You'll see a lot of teams who go, okay, this is what it's for, this is what we're all about, and then they try and push those values. If you do it too much, it can ruin the kind of shape of the post sometimes, because they try and add in the verbatim words or the abbreviations that they know, and someone comes along and sees it and goes, I have no idea what half this stuff is. It's, all this is your industry language, which I don't get. Like there's a lot of stuff behind it, but you're like, but I can't understand it because I'm a layman. I came to you because I had a problem with X, and now you're telling me all these different things. So you kind of look at it and go, well, thank you, I understand your company, but I don't understand really the message. Yeah, exactly. And we try and frame a lot of our content around our values, which one is simple, because I think that's what we should achieve as a brand agency or design agency. You're trying to distill things down to its most simplest form so people can see it Yeah, people don't have the attention span, do they, to keep it going?
They don't at all. Bold is another one. We should be challenging and trying to push things forward and have an opinion on something. True is another one. So anything that we're saying, we've done a bit of research to find out, is that stat valid, or is the stat that we're giving or providing valid? Is the statement we're saying true to the point? And overall of that is having a customer focus, but that's kind of twofold. So customer focus for our own customers, but the work we do is essentially for the customer of our customer, not directly the customer. If that makes sense.
I know what you mean. Yeah, it's a message for the person on behalf of that company. So you're making the message clearer, essentially,
for their audience. Yeah. So we're producing something for their brand that's trying to appeal to a particular audience. So we need to make sure that the messaging that we try and put forward is capturing that essence as well. So even just looking at your values and helping shape, you won't capture all your values in one post, but it's a flavor of them. And over time, people should say, oh, I quite like that company because they seem to make a simple point, but they're quite bold in their approach. And they start saying some of your values without even knowing them.
When you have your own language, that becomes good, because what they'll do is they'll tell you your message back to you, and from there you go, okay, now I know what you resonated with, and then the content's done really well, and the marketing message is done really well, and you've got your values out there. Is when they say to you, I want to be this, and it's something that you've instilled over time with your content and with your message. You're like, yes, I've got it.
Yeah.
So all of these the values and brand guidelines and branding and a message as a whole, is this something you cover in the new webinar series, Branding.Done?
Yeah, so we're kicking off specifically looking at B2B, mainly because we feel that's an area where we currently, collectively, everyone involved, not just our agents, like people in general, is the biggest shift. B2B, in a lot of instances, is still delivering brand and messaging and design that feels like a business trying to talk to another business. And at the end of the day, that isn't what's happening. It's a human trying to talk to another human. Yes, through the process, if the purchase is of a reasonable size, there'll be numerous people involved in that buying process and signing off a proposal, but it's still a selection of people. So we're trying to get across the point that B2B doesn't need to be boring. It needs to be more human. It needs to celebrate all that's good about the company and the people that are working for that company, and actually get some messages out there that are saying something and having a really strong opinion as well. So the first one on Friday, which is 18 minutes, is a more broad overview of how do you stop B2B branding being as boring and dull as it often is.
Yeah.
And then the spin-off ones from there are moving into specifics. So things that build up a brand identity, essentially. So we're going to do one that focuses solely on color and color theory. We're going to do one based around like tone of voice, movement and sound as well. Another thing that is often overlooked, even now in the digital age where everything can move and make a sound, I still think it just gets briefed in and someone does a bit, rather than what pace should we move? How does the type come on and off the page? What kind of sound portfolio do we have around our brand? And start to make that more consistent as well. So we're going to do it in bite-sized chunks after the first one, which is a bit more of an overview.
It's an interesting, the sound theory is an interesting bit that got me then, is can you imagine what soundtrack your company would have going forward? I was like, what makes them tick? Because if you think about, I'll put this in like video game terms, if you had like any form of like action, the type of action would also relate to the kind of theme that you've got. So if you had like on a menu screen and you move down, if it's a horror game, it would be a scream, and you've got those sort of things. If it's your business, and then someone watches a video of you and it sees maybe it's some a jazz type bebop, have you got a company then which is freestyle, it's free flowing, that's what kind of value that comes out of it? So is it around that kind of themes?
Exactly. It's we all now have an ability to be able to move and make a sound more now than ever before. It used to just be for your TV ad maybe, or your radio ad, whereas any social asset can have those qualities if we want them to. but they need to be thought through. They can't just be, oh, can you just throw a jingle over the top of that? Or can it just move however you decide? Your company should know whether it's going to move fast or slow. JCB would move maybe slightly slower and methodical to try and get a point across that it's well engineered and well crafted. Whereas a tech company might be way more slick and faster paced and coming in off the screen a little bit quicker. But you can determine the pace of your brand right at the start, again, based around what it is that you stand for as a company. And I've been saying this for years, but having gone to Alton Towers with my lad earlier in the year, each of the rides carry that through. So like the Wicker Man, for example, is all made of wood that looks like it's about to set on fire, and this Wicker Man's rising up from the fire. But the sound on the way in starts to build up a picture and momentum. You get a movie just before you get onto the cart. Again, tells this story, and the sound starts to become quite demonized. But it's even like the language when you hand your bag in before you go on the ride. It says, hand over all possessions. It doesn't say, this is where you drop your bags. It's got a narrative to it. And instead of exit on the sign, it's escape. And it's just little subtleties, both in tone of voice, movement, sound, that paints that full picture and experience. And just because that's a physical ride, for me, doesn't mean that you can't deliver that in digitally branded assets. You can do essentially the same thing that's right for your company.
Without doing what everyone else does, and where we just put up a show reel and we just put up an animated version of our website. There's a little bit more to it. It's more of a it's more thought through between the message and the brand and everything else that goes along with it. Especially when it comes to businesses' websites, it needs to encompass all of that together, doesn't it? Because what we have is immediately when you go to our website, it's a guide. It's something which people can actually use and implement, which is what we do. Is that we want people to be going out, learning how to sell and present themselves, and basically we want people to start doing social selling. We want people to start talking about their businesses, and we want them to communicate, much like your message, online in a way which isn't just I'm a business, I want your business, let's have a discussion. It's a little bit robotic, and now I think we're past that. We are at a stage where we need to start thinking more about our content, thinking more about what we're putting out there, as business owners and leaders, as well as just for business, because I feel like businesses are the backdrop to the people now. People are where you're going to get the sales from. People are where you're going to get communications from. People are where you're going to get opportunities from. So what happens in behind you is everything that backs you up to get there. So personal branding and that branding does come into play with that. So it gives you a good platform so you can move forward and get the job done right. And then it takes yourself to move it forward with your message and your values to really go through with that. How did you start formulating these steps for your webinars? Because obviously you thought out every step of your webinar process. What made you think to do it as a webinar series?
We ran a couple of webinars over the pandemic and replacing them for seminars that we used to do around the Northwest in like hotel rooms and things like that. So that was one of the catalysts. But we just did them sporadically throughout the pandemic. And then in the last few months, we've taken on a new digital marketing manager as well. And we've gone through all the things that we do to develop our brand, one of which is webinars. And Amy's basically taken the lead to say, well, we should really try and make more of them and make them a series that people can engage with and follow. And they might dip in and out of one or two of them, but we'll send the recordings to everyone that's attended or at least registered an interest. So you'll get a nice piece of work and learnings from the series of webinars that you can obviously stitch together. But we wanted to get something that could flow nicely from one thing to the next. Branding's a big topic, and sometimes people are just looking at a very small slice. They might be just looking at tone of voice because that's where it's weak, or they might be doing another exercise. So we kind of think that will help it and spread out the content. Equally, we only want each one 18 minutes, that's it. So they're going to be fast paced and get to a point quickly. Again, it comes back to our values of being simple and bold. And we can break down all of the branding content over a longer period of time and give people the day back. So instead of an hour seminar, which is the standard, it's 18 minutes. Done.
What made you land on 18 minutes specifically?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, we have a process in the agency called 18 degrees.
Okay, yeah.
And 18 degrees is essentially the start of dawn on the planet. So that's when it's dark below the horizon and you're just about to move into light. So that's when we run like workshops and fact-finding exercises and things like that for our clients. And then we move it to 12 degrees where you can see like bigger objects like trees and buses. And then 6 degrees, you can see the human face. And then above 6 degrees is full daylight. So we take every project through 18, 12 and 6 degrees to the point where it can be launched. So 18 degrees and then 18 obviously matched. And then on the other side of it, TED Talks have proven that 18 minutes is the exact amount of time required both for people to take in content and not get bored. And also 18 minutes gives the speaker enough time to create a story and a message that has a point at the end. So by default, the TED Talk research matched our 18-degree name. So we thought, well, there you go, beautiful. 18 minutes.
You saw the outcome of the video and went, yes, we did it.
Exactly.
It's perfect.
Exactly. So 18 it is, and they'll all be 18 minutes, yeah.
That's really interesting because obviously we put our own Maverrik webinars on fortnightly on Tuesdays because we found 7 o'clock is probably the best time to get people because they've just, well, you come home and people still want to do some learning and learn something new about, developing their business. So we kept it to that time. But it's interesting that shortening it down can maybe remove a little bit of the formalities of it. You always have the welcomes and you have sort of at the end, you've got a little part, which is you're kind of chugging along a little bit. I understand because there's a lot to cover a lot of the time. When people choose their webinar titles, people are very ambitious. Whenever we're working with some of our clients to, develop our own webinars, it's, I can do one on, and then it's just what I do as an industry. And it's good that you want to communicate that message, but I feel like we need to niche down more. I see a lot of webinars out there, which is it can be just how to do X. And even when we put out ones like that to draw people in who want to achieve that, we say to you, this is probably going to be longer than just this 1 hour. This is just a chat to make sure that you know what you need to do. And then throughout a series like you've got yourself, really flush it out because you need to have your topics kind of put down on paper, but this is what I need to achieve for that webinar. How many topics do you have so far?
We've got 6 for the first part of this series. So they're all based on B2B branding, but like I say, the first one's a bit of a summary, really fast paced. This is how you change from being boring. And then the other ones are very specific to elements of a visual identity. And again, 18 minutes gives you just enough to get into the detail, kind of prove a point, educate about something, and hopefully leave people going, wow, I didn't know that, or that's really helped me make a decision, or it's given more meaning to why people pick color rather than color's color. Does it really matter? Well, yes. Yeah, it's hugely important. So a number of little takeaways, opportunity to engage briefly as well with a few, like, not Q&As, more like a question stroke feedback kind of session, and a few prizes and giveaways for people that have performed well in the answers.
That's nice.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about people would come to web and said, I feel like our tone of voice is wrong. This might be I'm pulling you back from the last conversation onwards. But I want to know, what does that look like? How would someone diagnose their own message and say, okay, I think this is wrong? What's the symptoms of that?
Well, I mean, it probably depends where it starts from, doesn't it? I mean, I would imagine a certain size of company that has a marketing representative as a minimum, or maybe a couple of people, they're probably going to be the catalyst for it, in all fairness. I know other people understand what tone of voice is, but it's not at the front of their mind, I wouldn't have said. As I said before, I think it's a very, very difficult area to get right. But you probably need to, whether you've started the role new or you've been at the role for a while, is actually reach out to the company and gather your own content. And that could be internal documents as much as external documents. Start to read through them, get a highlighter pen, have a look at where there's some inconsistencies. And even just by doing that exercise over a couple of days, you could probably shape 10 to 20% more consistency just by doing simple things. Like I said before, are we a spoken voice type brand? Are we written word? What can we do there? Then you're looking at your values and say, have we got those values? Are they really being celebrated in that content?
Yeah, does it line up together?
Yeah, the words that we're saying that are a bit more, if you want to be more upbeat or friendly, how do you achieve that? That can be, hey there, on your website rather than welcome to. That those two things say the same thing, but they're very different in the way that they've been put forward. And one of them will be right and one will be wrong for your company. But it's trying to understand first, again, I always come back to values. Like, if you know what they are, then they need to be celebrated everywhere across your business. And tone of voice would be one of them. And so those values might start to influence what kind of character and tone your brand should actually have. And you'll then get a feel if it's wrong already by reading through your own documentation and going, it doesn't really match what we believe we stand for. And some things are just forgotten about. We'll discuss it on some of our webinars, but an automated email. Most of the time, people forget that someone in software has written the response. Yeah, and that's just a formulaic response. But not many people go in and edit it and think, well, fine, I know what we're trying to say there, but how are we going to say it? And do we want someone to raise a smile as they read it, or what are we trying to achieve when they read our content?
Even when it's down to they've downloaded a form from your website and it's adding a little bit of more to that, like you said earlier with the rides, that download could be, thank you for downloading, here's your PDF. Or it could be, hey there, you're great to get started on your new journey about this. We're going to take you through this. This is your first step. Here you go. And then you take it forward from that.
Exactly. And the two things are very different on receipt, and it's no different just to talking to somebody.
It can also go the other way around, where if you sort of been sent some proper legal documents and someone said, hey there, how's it going, guy? And it's like, this is really serious.
Well, exactly. And that's why, there's a number of different ways to write a tone of voice. You've got to pick the right one for you as a brand, and carve out some degree of distinction as well. But it's the right place at the right time. I mean, just because you write in a certain way doesn't mean it's appropriate for every single document in the whole company either. Like you say, there might be just some things that need to be pared down a bit, but good brands, and I use Virgin as an example again. Virgin have historically shared the same values across all of their businesses. Well, they dial them up and down depending on the business. So flying Virgin Atlantic and spending thousands of pounds to fly to America is very different to buying broadband. So they both still have an element of fun in their brand, but the brand at Atlantic is slightly more sophisticated fun, isn't it? They've got a walk-up bar, which suggests we're more fun than, say, BA. So join us on your flight to America. So it makes you feel, it's going to be a bit more vibrant as a flight, and I like the idea of walking up to the bar. That's an element of fun. And then you've got Virgin Media or the trains, when they ran the trains and putting a message in the toilet, things like that come about because you want to showcase that you're kind of fun as a brand. And that's how you go about celebrating them. But you dial them up and down depending on who's your audience or what's the document.
And what the product's all about and what the service is all about. Yeah. So I've got this is probably the cheesiest part of the podcast. What is your expert tip? So you put it out there. It's a bit like, I'm going to call myself the expert now, but it's just a segment for the show. I'm trying to make it catch on. What would be your expert tip?
Well, being 25 years into the industry, being specialist in branding myself, I can't think of any other tip, and our webinars will showcase this. Is one, make sure that you have what we call a brand core. You have written words for a purpose, values. You may have vision and mission and other things around it, but you'll essentially have a document that has been written and approved across the whole business, and everyone is bought into it. If you don't, you need to do it. If there is one and no one ever touches it, you need to drag it out from wherever it is, reread it, start to celebrate it. If you're doing something with it regularly, great. If you're doing something with it every single day and everyone in the business is doing it and your brand identity is representing it, then you're absolutely flying. But no decision should be made without reading your values and your purpose and saying, is what we're about to do completely us? And allowing people to understand the values, to innovate within a business. In any part of the business, people should be allowed to throw an idea onto a board or on a digital sheet or however you share your information.
We've got a suggestion box.
Yeah, that type of thing. But I'm on the front face. I've done this today. And what I noticed that we could actually celebrate this value more by doing X.
Yeah.
That should be listened to. And if everyone thinks that's a good idea, it should be implemented quite quickly if it can be. Like I say, when I run some of the seminars, just looking at your next email or your next social post the day after the seminar or webinar, just tweak that one thing then. Look at your values and see if you can tweak that one thing to nudge you a little bit closer to where you should be. But it's values, purpose. All of those things sometimes get laughed off. But for me, that's how all decisions should be made, because it creates a framework for everyone to be able to make decisions.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, David, for coming on the show today.
No, thank you for having us.
I'll just do a sign off. Thank you for watching the Maverrik podcast. Please subscribe to us wherever you get your good podcasts from, and follow us on YouTube as well. Or subscribe to us on YouTube. How new to this am I? And follow us on YouTube. Don't forget, click on notification bell so you get alerted every time we put out a new episode, and we will see you next time.